This episode of INFocus is being made possible through the support of First Bank Richmond, with 8 locations in Wayne County to serve you. First Bank Richmond, bank where you belong. And by Reed Health, offering nationally recognized quality and technology with a personal touch. Reed Health, let's shine together. And by The Leland Legacy, a rich past and a bright future. Live your best life at The Leland Legacy. Hi, and welcome to this week's INFocus on WGTV Channel 11. I'm Eric, Executive Director of Whitewater Community Television. Greatly appreciate you taking the time to join us for this particular show. Hopefully you'll find something interesting to help you think about for a little while. A little bit later on in this program, we'll speak to Jon Duke from Wayne County Emergency Management. But we're going to open up the show with a couple of guests who are going to talk about something, don't throw things at your TV, the bikeability and walkability of the city. Stop throwing those tomatoes now. Okay, this is not about infrastructure tear up, okay? We're not talking about tearing up the streets with this, so let's start there. Our guests include Barry Cramer, a community member, and he'll explain how he got involved in this many moons over the horizon ago, and Elisa Worland. Thanks both of you for being here. This started because I actually was watching, scary to say, the Richmond Common Council meeting, the first meeting of October. You all presented to the Common Council a program, an idea, and actually kind of challenged them to move on some things about the walkability and bikeability of, and you all said Wayne County. Not just Richmond, but you all are making this a larger conversation, and I think that's a good thing. A lot of the conversation to this point has been around Richmond. Talk a little bit about how both of you came to this. Barry, we're going to start with you because I think you probably have the longer history in this conversation in this immediate area.
So Eric, I've been an active bicyclist since I was a kid, and I chose to ride my bike to school rather than ride the school bus, or I walked.
Okay.
I enjoy the outdoors. I enjoy being active. I enjoy not contributing to, putting carbon in the air,
Sure.
through driving. I drive when I need to.
It's okay to say that.
Yes. And so I've just always enjoyed bicycling. As a as a Boy Scout, I earned a bicycling merit badge.
I didn't know there was such a thing.
Rode a challenging course with my brother, who experienced a rather serious accident while biking. So we learned from that. We learned how to, ride safely. Mm-hmm. My first experience on a rails to trails conversion was when I lived in the Washington, D.C. area, and the old C&O Railroad had been converted to a trail along the Potomac River. And that was before it was paved. It was sort of a gravelly surface.
Sure.
But I just really enjoyed being out there by the river, and going up there and exploring a little bit. So it's just been something that's sort of ingrained in me. And when I moved here in 1995, I brought my bicycle with me, and I was wanting to make use of it as much as possible, and was pretty soon discouraged about that because you got some very heavily trafficked highways that are not very inviting to be on. And some of the alternatives are not always feasible. You've got the river and the gorge. Mm-hmm. So any way you turn, there's something standing in the way. And so I brought with me the goal of making the city more bikeable. I'm also an advocate of transit, so I've had some input there. I think I started being actively advocating for bicycle improvements when Shelley Mayer was, Shelley,
Miller?
no, not Sally Hutton, Shelley Miller.
Yep.
was mayor. Yes, and that's like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, and then when a young businessman, Mark Stossberg, got involved, created Bike Richmond and wanted to create a map. I was involved with him in helping create that map that came out in 2008. The city actually incorporated those bike routes onto the Roseview Transit map, you know, as an official map of the city. And so when I had opportunity to serve as on the advisory committee for the master planning process back in 2014, I took advantage of that and added my own voice. And since then, I've been saying, okay, let's figure out how to get this implemented.
Okay. Elisa, what brought you to this conversation in this area?
So first of all, I bike myself. I bike to work off and on. I started biking more regularly after college. I had a lot of friends who lived in the Bay Area who only had bicycles for transportation, which was a little crazy to me initially. But after watching that, I was like, okay, you can make that work. But yeah, I moved to Wayne County about 4 years ago. And I remember when I was looking for housing, I stayed in one of the hotels down at the other end of town. And I thought to myself, I'm going to go walk and grab some food because there were all these fast food places along there. Mm-hmm. And I got to the edge of the parking lot and I said, no, I'm not. I'm going to get hit by a car. And I was like, it's kind of bonkers. There's no sidewalks down here. And having lived here for a while, you'd see people walking down 40 regularly. And in this area, you know, about 9% of households in Richmond don't own a vehicle, and another 30% of them are one vehicle households.
Sure.
That's a lot of folks who don't have access to a vehicle during the day if somebody goes to work, or they don't have one, period, for a variety of reasons. Could be that someone's got a physical disability, they're elderly and they can't drive anymore. Could be someone's in recovery and they can't have access to a driver's license at that point, or might be young people who don't have a driver's license yet as well, but they still all need to get around.
Sure.
Yeah, so I kind of had that in the back of my mind as I was going about my work, and then had an opportunity to be a fellow with the America Walks Fellowship Program, which trains community members on how do you increase walkability and bikeability in communities, and that covers information about advocacy, how planning works in cities and townships, things you should be looking for, what are some best practices. So I went through that and I was like, this is great. I don't know if anybody's working on this here currently, and I don't want to reinvent the wheel.
Sure.
So I kind of put out a call to some folks and said, hey, can you get together and can we just like talk about what's happening in this sphere, and just want to gather some data. And those folks were really interested in meeting regularly and continuing to push this stuff forward. So that led to our bikeability, walkability work group.
So talk a little bit about this work group. You talked a little bit about how it came together. How many community members are we talking about? And is this a group that is mostly centered around Richmond, or is this a county-wide group?
Yeah, so I think currently we've got, maybe 8 to 10 that are fairly active in the group, and then other folks that are on our email list. And folks from kind of a variety of walks in terms of cycling and active transportation. So it's like Steve and Hayes Jr. from Hayes Arboretum, where they have a lot of mountain biking.
Yes.
Hiking is really important, is involved with that. John Weber, who's kind of more of a long distance cyclist on weekends. So there's kind of different like bike factions within the community,
And,
I've found.
and Stu Milligan,
Yeah.
who sponsors the ride every month,
Yes.
including one.
He does that
on the
9-10 months out of the year
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
so, where he's got various
for a different
bike
level
rides.
of cyclists.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's kind of a more beginner, kind of very open level there. So there's
Easy to
kind of-
find them on Facebook if you're looking for them.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Rose
Yeah.
petals.
Rose petals, yes.
Yeah, but also like Misty Hollis from the YMCA. So folks are involved with kind of trying to get youth to be more active. So yeah, kind of a variety of folks coming together to see how do we shape this, what exists already. I have had some conversations too with some of the folks in the Western Wayne area about this as well, because it shouldn't just be Richmond. For example, there is a bike route, is it the US 50, is that right? That runs through Wayne County. So we need to be thinking about connectivity and how do these things fit together. And maybe going back to that transportation question again, in my office, since I wear a hat as health and human sciences educator, I get calls kind of regularly from folks saying, hey, I've got this person who has a medical issue that can't be taken care of here. They need to go to Indy. How do they get there? We don't have transportation that leaves the county. Like, we can't even get to Centerville on a bus.
Correct.
So how are we getting people to the things they need? And some of that is going to need to be on foot or by bicycle. And they should have as much access to the community as everyone else.
There's obviously been a lot of work done with the Cardinal Greenway Trail, making that something that people use, and they are using it. And there's a couple of components to this, and you all talked about some of it, and I'm going to get you all to talk a little bit more. One, the health of our community. Indiana is not known for being the healthiest state in the union, and Wayne County is on the low end of health in Indiana, which doesn't say good things for us. So there's a health issue to this. You mentioned the transportation, people being able to get around. And then there is the tourism piece that I think you all actually mentioned too. Talk about where you all fall as you're looking at this. Are there priorities within that list that make you all want to try to get certain things done before others in terms of routing? Are there places that you all are hoping to be able to connect people to, or areas that you're hoping to be able to connect people to first more than another when you look at those routes?
Yeah, so I think one thing that we saw in the original bicycle and pedestrian master plan is that they thought of the parks more as hubs. And I think as we started talking a little bit in our group is that there might be a need to think about some of these shopping areas too as hubs. You know, how many folks need to get to Kroger or Walmart?
Okay.
Like Hayes Arboretum and Glen Miller are great, but also there's people who need transportation because that's how they get goods. So I think that's a piece that we've really looked at, and I think Barry and some of our other folks in our group have really broken down those routes really well to reflect that.
Elisa also likes to talk about wayfinding. You know, so this U.S. Bicycle Route 50 that she mentioned is a transcontinental route intended to go from the Atlantic to the Pacific. And so anybody who rides part of that is going to come through Richmond from Ohio and on beyond. It goes down, it comes in the southeast part of the city and then goes down Main Street. And there are amenities on Main Street, but there's no, I don't know how much wayfinding there is to say, hey, here's the depot district. You know, people are, you know, needing facilities, needing places to eat. They might want to know where a bike repair shop is, you know, things like that. So we, you know, a lot of need for wayfinding.
Yeah, right. I think of even too, we recently did some walks with city council folks just along some of the bicycle infrastructure points to point out some of the issues that are coming up. And for example, down in the, near the Veterans Park, there's like a little curve. And if you go a little bit further, you see the sign that says what's down there. But there's a route where you can get over to the Star Jeanette building without having to cross over the road up there and go up this giant hill. I didn't know that little curve existed until like, I think last year when we were doing our homeless point in time count, and I was like out on foot wandering around the gorge looking for people. And I was like, I would have used that had I known this existed. Yeah,
and the southern end of that, not the exact terminus, but it comes out by the Star Jeanette building. And I've been to the winter farmers market, I don't know how many times.
Right.
Did not know that that spot was there that got onto the bike trail because there wasn't signage.
So we've got a couple of issues. One, letting people know truly what currently exists.
Yeah.
And then making it better for a larger community.
Yeah.
In your mind, as you all talk with your group, what needs to come first? Because when you all were talking to the council, you all said this was a 10-year plan that was back in 2015. We're heading into 2025. It's coming at us quickly. That's that 10-year mark. So as you all kind of look at that plan, did it lay out what should happen in order, or is this something you all are trying to decide now based on what's happening now? A plan 10 years ago can't take into effect everything that we know now.
So I'm going to go with that mnemonic device that I came up with when we gave a workshop back in the spring. It was about wanting connectivity. So we have a hub or two, like Jack Elstro Park, Glenn Miller Park. We're trying to develop the spokes because it's a hub and spoke arrangement. So we're trying to develop the spokes. We need the connectivity. To do that, we need some collaboration between not just city government, but also with NDOT, with the county, because we have to cross bridges that the county maintains.
Sure.
We need to collaborate with other property-owning quasi-public institutions here, like schools, where there might be a need for a facility. We might bring some expertise. They would provide the real estate. And then we need coordination within the city. Our walk indicated, Parks Department's involved with this. The Streets Department is involved with this. The police may be involved with that. Who's coordinating it?
Right.
How does anybody who wants to solve a problem even know where to start? But the bottom line is we need commitment so that we can carry through and get it completed, although it never will be completed. But, so it was
Never say never now.
Yeah, so.
Well, it needs to grow with the community as the community grows.
Yeah.
So it should always be front of mind. How does that fit into this plan? Because it's hard to put in sidewalks after the fact. It's hard to expand a road, So how can that be something that's front of mind as we're doing that planning? But I think, one of the critiques you hear about the loop, and there's reasons to have critiques of that, and people say, well, I don't see many people on it. Well, it doesn't connect to a lot of stuff right now. And if you don't know how to get to some of these pieces and use it, then that becomes complicated. So wayfinding and even just like bike shares, which are the kind of the arrows with the bike symbol that let drivers know this road is shared, can be really helpful, because then as a cyclist, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be. And then you're not ending up on roads where it's going to be unsafe and you're going to have conflicts with drivers. And how far things are for you and where they are. So like if you look at, don't want to invoke the West Coast, but like Portland, Oregon, for example, they don't have many actual designated cycle paths like our loop. A lot of it's on street, but they've looked at okay, this is our busy road for cars. They'll pick some road that's parallel to that and they'll put in some traffic circles, or the roads are narrower. It's not ideal for a car to go down there. And those are the designated bike routes. And they've got little signs and things along the way so you're still on the route.
So you're maybe a block or two off of the main
Yeah.
road, but you're still heading in the direction that you want to get into.
Yeah, and it's considerably safer because you're not fighting with cars along the way, and cars don't want to be on that road. You can still get down it if you live in that neighborhood, but it's going to be a lot safer for kids, for cyclists, anyone on that road, because traffic's just not going to go as fast. So if you think about trying to drive down A Street versus B Street in Richmond, B Street's a pain in the butt if you're in a car. But it's going to be a lot safer if you're a cyclist going down some of those pieces, because there's not going to be as much traffic. It's slower, the road's narrower, and there's a lot of natural things too you can do to slow down traffic. So I think people think a lot about bike paths, but just planting trees so the road feels narrower slows down traffic. That's something that we've seen in studies.
Okay.
So like there's little things that we could be doing that would also help with climate.
I was in downtown Muncie yesterday, and it looked like the streets had been recently paved, and they were working on getting the striping down. And it was clear that they had modified where the car lane was, identified where the parking was going to be, and had a bike lane as well. So it comes with, as work progresses, you can include these amenities.
Well, you're watching INFocus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. We're having a conversation about the walkability and bikeability, not only of Richmond, but of Wayne County. My guest, Barry Cramer, Elisa Worland. We appreciate you taking the time to join us, whether you are watching this on WGTV Channel 11, whether you're viewing this on YouTube, or maybe it's a Sunday morning and you're listening to the audio on G1013 or their sister station, ESPN Radio, 1490 AM, 100.9 FM, WKBV. However you're checking us out, we appreciate you spending some time with us. Hopefully this is a conversation that if you're interested in the walkability and bikeability of the Wayne County area, you can connect with these folks and become a part of this conversation, because it sounded like, as you all were having this conversation, particularly with the Richmond Common Council, and I know you all have had conversations with Wayne County also, that you're asking them some of those questions. How do we begin to move forward? How do we collaborate? Have you gotten answers, and have you gotten any input from anyone since you all made that presentation to the city? I know it was only 4 weeks ago, but have you gotten, I know Doug Goss is one who said, have you thought about a different route, even at that meeting? Have you had other people do that for you?
And he provided that route for me.
He did, okay. Okay, so there has been some follow-up from that. Talk about how that came, and is that a route that you all had thought about?
Oh, he had pretty much, I think. What we presented at the council meeting was 4 routes, 4 maps out of about 10 maps we had prepared. We were limited in time. We selected 4 that we thought were the most important. So a lot of routes that people might like were not identified in that presentation. So I think pretty much those were, I think there was one new idea in there. It's a good one.
Yeah, and we've had some folks reach out to you by email as well after the presentation we did, saying, hey, have you thought about this route? Or also like, I'm involved with this thing over here. Be interested in connecting and seeing how these initiatives might be able to coincide with each other. So,
the group that you all are working with, do you all meet on a regular basis at this point? Is this just kind of a called meeting type of thing, and are you all still going at this?
Yeah, we meet monthly, usually for about an hour, and talk about ways we can continue moving some of this work forward. I think currently it's just kind of whatever fits in each other's schedules when we do that, so we don't have a set date and time at this point, but it's usually in the morning, either on like a Tuesday or Thursday.
So unfortunately, it does fall during working hours.
Yeah.
And a lot of people who might be interested, can't participate in something like that. But I happen to be retired now, so I'm more engaged than I was when I was working.
If someone wants to be part of this conversation, they have a thought about a route, they want to offer some support, how do they connect with, does this group even have a name?
The bikeability, walkability work group is the name so far. I think Stu was advocating for something more interesting, but
we had a hard time coming up with the name. That's pretty ad hoc right at this point. But people can reach her through Purdue.
Yeah.
Purdue Extension.
How do they connect? Is there a phone number? Is there an email?
Yes.
Is there something? Is there a better way?
Yeah, our phone number is 765-973-9281, or by email at eworland@purdue.edu.
Okay. As you have started this conversation, and we've talked a lot about, obviously, your conversation with Richmond and their Common Council, you all kind of started this conversation, you mentioned at that meeting, with folks from Wayne County. Talk about how that came about, and has that conversation been able to progress, and how?
Yeah, so I am aware that there's folks that are also long-distance cyclers out on the other side of the county. They're using some of the infrastructure that exists, and but we did a presentation for elected officials back in May, where we invited folks from INDOT and from Indiana Department of Health to share a little bit about bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, some data, why this is important, what are some of the best practices within there. And I think we had pretty decent turnout for that. I think this is maybe a conversation that maybe engaging a bit more with some of the Main Street organizations and some of the township governments might be helpful, because some of those areas don't necessarily have like their own comprehensive plan for the town and things like that, and that would be an initial element to look at. So
The plans that you were talking about that started, how helpful have they been in helping move you all forward, or were they created so long ago that many things have changed?
Well, some of these routes were envisioned back in 2008 when Mark Stossberg worked on a map and got it published.
Buildings go up, buildings go down, roads change.
Those routes, a lot of them got picked up by the consultants who worked on the master plan.
Okay.
And one reason we're focused on those right now is that stripes on a street can be erased if you need to, you know. And so we're not trying to get a jump start on, you know, I understand the mayor wants to have a transportation study, you know. These can be undone if necessary. We're not talking about, you know, construction per se. We're talking about, you know,
paint on the ground, some signs up.
Yeah.
Like really basic.
But I wouldn't envision that any new plan would not see the merit of these particular ones. You know, and they might want to upgrade them some. You know, we can start with sharrows on the street, but at some point maybe that would become a multi-use path, or maybe it would get separated off a little bit. But for right now, we're just working on the streets.
Is there any way that you all can quantify how much this might get used? Because I go through social media periodically. I know people don't like the loop building for a number of reasons. One, it creates problems for businesses while it's being built. Two, a lot of people say nobody's on it, and you mentioned that. Can you talk about how much you all really believe that cycling is used, or needing even more walkability in the city? Because there are those, and I'm not poo-pooing, that would say there really aren't that many bicyclists around.
I keep my eyes open, and I think I see more maybe than somebody who's otherwise not paying attention. You know? So coming up Chester Boulevard this morning to come here, there was a fellow walking his bike up the hill on the sidewalk, up past the old Reed Hospital. I see bicyclists on Northeast Street. I see bicyclists on East Main Street, riding the sidewalk. On East Main, on Northeast, sometimes they're weaving in and out. The parked cars are going up on sidewalks. There is more there than we recognize. I see people walking, and they're wearing a hat or an apron. They're going to work somewhere out on East Main Street. They've got a ways to go yet. You know, a mile, maybe. I mean, I don't know. So that's why we need sidewalks. Before Chester Boulevard was ever upgraded, you could see the path along the street where sidewalks needed to be, and fortunately they did get put in. But my admonitions to put in a wider path that would include bicycles did not get heeded. So we see somebody walking one up the sidewalk today.
What's the next step for you all as a group? How do you carry this conversation forward? What do you all need in terms of more community conversation to get our elected officials teaming up with the local police departments, teaming up with the county sheriff's department, teaming up with INDOT? As you said, you got to bring a lot of people to the table to do this. So in you all's minds, what are the next couple of steps that have to take, and have you all kind of timed those out in your head?
Yeah, so I think a couple things here. I think one is getting folks to recognize that not all bicycle infrastructure needs to look like the loop. Like, it doesn't have to be bricks and things being put in. It can be just like paint on the ground and some signage.
But when you talk about the safety of one versus the other, do you need to balance those things out at all, depending on where you are?
Absolutely, yeah. So it is safer to have a separate space for bicycles and for pedestrians. And I think Stu's actually talked about this a little bit online with the the cycle route. It's wide for a reason. So if you've got cars over here, you don't want to have someone open a car door and you get slammed as you're going down on a bicycle. You can't have a bicycle directly next to the curb because you will get caught in there too. So there does need to be a little bit of space for passing. And you look at places like down by the Sturgeonette building, they moved those the record mosaics onto those large kind of, I don't even know what to call them.
Yeah, they put them in concrete and lifted them up on the sidewalk.
But it's on the sidewalk.
Right.
So I see conflicts all the time being down there with cars, strollers, even people walking because there's not enough space for two people to go by over there. So you do need to have a certain width for some of these. But yeah, if you're on the road, it is less safe. Having a bike lane instead of just sharrows is safer. Having a bike lane and then kind of blockers of some sort is the next safer spot, and then having a separate path altogether is the safest option. And some people aren't gonna want to bike on the road. Like if I had a 3-year-old who's on their training bike, I would rather be on a cycle path than be on the road. I had some friends come to visit from Washington, D.C., and they thought it was awesome that we had this path going through downtown because they don't feel very comfortable being on a road. And we're impressed that we had that kind of infrastructure. So I think understanding that there's different ways of doing bicycle infrastructure. Some of it could just be putting in some pretty traffic circles to slow things down, not the large ones in Carmel, but even littler ones within neighborhoods can be a nice traffic slowing option. And it doesn't have to be ugly. We can have cool looking bike racks. That have designs that reflect our community. So I think that's kind of the first step, is that attitude shift. But also recognizing we've got folks in our community that need this now. I was talking to someone a while back about an individual who is in recovery, so he doesn't have a car. He's working, he's going to 12-step meetings and is walking 2 hours across the community each day to get to work and to get to these meetings and to get home because the bus doesn't coincide well. Folks need this. This is a very real need.
Yeah. So the on-street facilities we talk about are going to be for some better skilled cyclists, adults, older teens maybe, but around the schools and where you have children riding bikes to school, you're going to want the wider paths. And that's what has been recommended. We're not even focused on that at this point. We're just saying, let's get started on something. You're going to see increased ridership when you provide the facilities.
Okay, we're down to our last couple of minutes. I'm going to give you each, what do you want the community to know? How do you want them to react? What do you need them to do?
I would encourage folks to have an open mind. And recognize there are folks out there biking. I know the Cardinal Greenway's got some stats. They get a lot of folks coming through there, and we have folks going north there too that will bike 60 miles, go eat breakfast or lunch, and then come back on a weekend. That's tourism money we could be capturing here, and we're not currently because it's not clear how you get from Cardinal Greenway to things downtown. So just little prompts of 2 minutes to the Depot District by bicycle from here. And some directional signs, that could make a huge difference. So.
And I would like people to remember that bicycling doesn't necessarily have to be just recreational in nature. It can be all parts of life. People can get to work on a bike. They can run their errands on a bike. They can go take care of public business. They can go to the courthouse, the post office, Social Security office. They can go many places if we provide the facilities.
And I think maybe one other quick thing, if I
Go
may.
for it.
Just think about, too, what do you want this community to look like? Do you want young people here? Young people want to be able to get outdoors and be able to walk and bike to things. So even if you personally don't want to use this thing, there might be other people in the community for whom this would be important.
It's a quality of life matter that is attractive to certain people. And if another community has that and we don't, they may choose the other community.
Okay. Something to think about. Beginnings of a conversation. Hopefully it continues. Hopefully you all will come back and periodically kind of update us as to how the conversations are going, what's moving, and continue this particular dialogue.
Be glad to.
Elisa Worland, Barry Cramer, appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay with us. We'll be back. I'm going to talk to Jon Duke from Wayne County Emergency Management when INFocus continues on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV, Channel 11.
SmartHub is a web and mobile app that allows you to do business with us like never before. You can manage your account, view and pay your bill, monitor your uses 24/7, report outages, and receive important notices, all in the palm of your hand. You will be able to save time and money with features like paperless billing, autopay, and much more. For more details on SmartHub, visit us online. Presented by Richmond Power and Light, your locally owned electric utility, building Richmond a better tomorrow.
Your organization can help lift individuals in your community out of poverty. You can get involved by jointly sponsoring a volunteer income tax assistance or tax counseling for the elderly site with the IRS, better known as VITA and TCE. Every year, the IRS works with faith-based organizations, nonprofits, schools, libraries, and employers across the country to sponsor sites where volunteers help people file their taxes for free. This not only benefits your organization by building partnerships and increasing community involvement, but helps bring back dollars to your local area. These sites are so important because 1 in 5 people don't take advantage of available tax credits. This means these individuals are leaving money on the table. VITA and TCE volunteers can help these folks claim tax credits that can put money in their pockets. Every year, VITA and TCE sites help lift millions of people out of poverty. The IRS supports VITA and TCE partners by providing tax law curriculum for your volunteers and the tax preparation software used to file people's tax returns. Your organization will work directly with an IRS employee who will help you recruit volunteers. If you would like to help your community by sponsoring a VITA or TCE site, go to irs.gov/volunteers.
Thanks for staying with us on this week's INFocus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. I'm Eric, Executive Director of WCTV. Thank you very much for staying with us as we turn the conversation from the bikeability and walkability of Wayne County to trying to keep you safe as we change seasons and head toward that season where we have little white things falling from the sky. There's a giant who scratches his head and we end up with stuff that we have to shovel. Jon Duke, Deputy Director of Wayne County Emergency Management, sitting in the chair and hanging out with us. Good to see you. It's been a while.
Good to see you. It's been a hot minute.
Yeah, it has. What's going on?
We're just preparing for the change of seasons, and we want to get out and encourage people to be ready. Winter weather changes very rapidly, and nobody wants to talk about cold weather, but unfortunately...
No, we don't. So this interview is over. Thank you.
Unfortunately, we all live in Indiana, or this area, and, you know, it's going to happen.
Okay.
So...
John and I have spent time in various studios together, so
Yes.
we do this to each other sometimes.
Yes. And
Let's talk about a couple of different things. Let's start with, if we can, your job with Wayne County Emergency Management real quickly. Talk about the type of things that you touch in your job on a day in, day out basis.
So we primarily do emergency planning and preparing for the what ifs that occur, and they can be anything from winter storms, severe cold.
The aftermath of tornadoes and other natural disasters.
Correct. Natural disasters, man-made disasters, large industrial fires. I mean, we're kind of like the middleman between the first responders and some higher up, bigger assets like state resources and things like that. So we do a lot of coordination. Again, like we said, I said we do the planning, so we do a lot of writing. We also do, part of our job is hazardous materials. So like if there's some kind of incident, we respond to that and we coordinate the response as needed. So.
And that's anywhere in Wayne County. So
Correct.
and we've recently had a couple of truck accidents on
Correct.
Interstate 70. Just because they're out on Interstate 70, you may still get a call for those depending on maybe what's in those trucks?
What's in those trucks, or even as something simple as if they are spilling diesel fuel. If their tanks rupture, there's certain criteria where they have to report, or we have to report, that spill to IDEM, or the Indiana Department of Environmental Management. And then we have to help kind of coordinate with the trucking company and IDEM and a remediation company to come in and clean up the mess when it's all over.
Does your job entail a little bit of being a PIO, kind of a public information officer in some ways?
Absolutely. I do a lot of public outreach, which is why I'm here. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
All right, fine.
All right. Yes, I do a lot of public outreach, and I go and I talk to organizations, and I provide training, or we'll go talk to extended care facilities and to their nursing staff or their staff about weather preparedness or how to be prepared or all that stuff where. And the reason I preach the preparedness is because if I can prepare you to take care of yourself and your family, that's one more person that I'm going to be able to take care of when that emergency happens that wasn't able to prepare themselves. So if the more people I can teach, that maybe is one less family or household that I don't have to worry about taking care of if a disaster were to occur.
Does that preparedness change depending on the time of year with what we need to do?
Absolutely it does.
As we're heading into November, December, January, talk about what you want people to think about and how you want them to be prepared.
So first off, I'm gonna say that every household should have at least an emergency supply kit. That supply kit should include enough food, water, critical medications, things that they use for daily life for at least 72 hours.
Okay.
Those kind of things, not only for the human part of the household, the humans, but also for pets. If you have 4 dogs and you don't have enough food to take care of them for 3 days, that could be a problem. So anything that makes your household run for 3 days, 72 hours, should be available to you all the time, period.
And you're thinking this is something physical. There is a box, there is
Absolutely.
a duffel bag, there is something.
Yep. And it can get a little cumbersome because, but it's not horrible, but it's food, water, essential supplies for 72 hours. Now, moving into the winter weather months, I also encourage people to have a car emergency kit where they put some extra clothing, blankets, a snow shovel, those kind of things. In addition to everybody should have, a first aid kit, a fire extinguisher, all those kind of things. But
My trunk is pretty empty.
shame on you.
I probably, yeah. But I'm not alone.
You're not. But it's a good idea to have something to help prepare you if you were to get stranded out on the road. But part of that is if you're aware of what's going on or what is going to go on or what is coming your way, you are already far better prepared than what you were before that. So I encourage people to sign up for alerts, and you can get those through the Emergency Management Agency, and you can text 888-777 in the to field of a text message, and then type your zip code in the body and hit send, and you will be signed up for Nixle alerts, where you can get emergency information, weather information, comes directly to your mobile device, and that in itself makes you more prepared for whatever is coming our way. So that is the first part of preparedness. Knowledge is key. Knowing what's coming allows you to better prepare. If you know it's going to rain, you take an umbrella.
Right.
If it's going to snow, you might give yourself a little more time on your daily commute. So that kind of knowledge better helps you to take care of yourself through the upcoming cold weather.
You've mentioned Nixle alerts. How do people distinguish what those alerts are actually telling them and how far out? Because weather is a changeable thing.
We're on television. I got to be careful. The National Weather Service basically produces products, and they have what is basically sent out several days in advance, and it tells you, hey, there's a chance this is going to happen. Because the weather forecasting is not an exact science. I mean,
It's gotten better through the years.
It has, but it's not an exact science. So, so that forecast is like, hey, you might want to pay attention to this. And then as we get closer to the event, they will put out what's called a watch. And a watch says, okay, hey, we're fairly certain this is going to happen, but we're not exactly sure. And they'll say, we think we're going to get this much snow, and we think this is going to happen. So you just need to pay attention to those things. And those are things that get pushed out through the National Weather Service. A lot of your television channels will provide that. You can sign up for these things in addition to ours. And you can get this information. It's out there. But when a warning is issued, that's when you need to pay attention, because that means that it is happening. It is either happening or it's going to happen.
They've nailed this down.
They've nailed it down. You're under the gun, and it's coming.
The first thing we get is an advisory.
Correct.
And we're seeing that.
It could be as much as 5 to 7 days out.
Okay.
A warning usually comes, a watch normally comes maybe a day out, as they use their models to kind of narrow down what's going to happen or what they predict is going to happen. Because as time gets shorter, they're able to get more accurate. And then when they are able to see exactly what is happening and where it's going to impact, that's when a warning will be issued, if one is warranted.
You all don't actually set travel restrictions, but you all have some conversation out of your office with the commissioners and the police.
Correct.
The commissioners are the ones who actually release that information. So kind of talk us through what people should think about, and how you expect them to react when they hear certain things.
Okay, so emergency management in coordination with law enforcement and elected officials discuss the situation, also county highway, and we discuss the conditions and what's going on, the situation, and then a decision is made on whether or not a travel advisory, or whatever is warranted. So those decisions are not made lightly, but it is a collective effort between many people based off of what we are actually seeing in Wayne County, and that's how that decision is made.
And I think people need to understand, and you can speak to this, that it's hard to issue something like that for just a small area.
Correct.
So we may be seeing something in western Wayne County that people need to be aware of that maybe isn't happening here in Richmond, or it's slightly north of I-70, something along those lines.
The magic I-70 line.
Yes.
So it's kind of an all or none. And we do the same thing for spring severe weather. It's all or none. If something is impacting western Wayne, we alert the entire county, because if it's that bad over there, there is a great potential that it could be that bad in Richmond when it gets here. And predominant winds and weather patterns send things from the western side to the eastern side most of the time. So if a travel advisory, a travel watch, travel warning is issued, it's all or none. And the one thing you have to remember is that it does not include state highways, but it does encompass and cover the other road surfaces. But it does not cover state highways, interstates, things like that. That's above our pay grade, I guess.
And I bring that up only because as you see a storm happening or something, and a travel advisory comes out, we won't even get into the bans, but a travel advisory comes out, and you start reading social media, and people are going, well, I'm not seeing anything happening here. Everything is clear here. Why are they doing this? And I just wanted you to explain that what you all are seeing is not a particular area. You all are looking at the totality of Wayne County, and there may be places in Wayne County that are seeing something that other places are not.
Correct, and one of the things that is becoming a lot more, let me rephrase that. One of the things that we have seen are snow squalls. Snow squalls are a pretty serious event, especially when they occur in rural areas, along interstates and things like that, where you can be driving along and then all of a sudden, bang, there's zero visibility and you end up with the 30-car pileup, which is a bad day for Matthew and I. But it may be clear in Richmond, but this snow squall may have happened over by Cambridge. So these kind of events, it is what it is. I mean, Wayne County is a fairly large area compared to some other counties that are adjacent to us, and we have a good-sized population, and a lot of people have to move around for their daily life. So you have to kind of prepare yourself. That's why we're here. That's why we're talking. And if you're prepared to take care of yourself, then even on your daily commute, that is a world of difference. It really is.
All right. Real quick, one more time, because we want people to be prepared. We want them to know. Tell them how to sign up for Nixle alerts, which will at least provide them some information. Whether they choose to look at it or not is up to them, but at least we'll provide them some information.
All right, so if you text 888-777 your zip code, or excuse me, text 888-777 and then put your zip code in the body of the message and hit send, that will automatically sign you up for Nixle, and you will receive alerts directly to your mobile device, and you are better prepared for any kind of inclement weather headed our way.
As we get a little bit farther, maybe closer to December, I might have you back and you can talk to me about El Niño and La Niña, and La Niña, and what may or may not be coming at us for the winter season. But we're hoping that it holds off until December.
Yeah, at least.
And our October weather kind of carries along, although we do need a little bit more water, I assume.
Yeah, and actually the prediction kind of, I'm going to lead us into that. The prediction is a wetter winter season, but that's a conversation for another day. Sir.
Okay, then we'll have you back and we'll have that conversation.
Excellent.
Jon Duke, Deputy Director, Wayne County Emergency Management, as always. Appreciate the time.
Well, thank you for having me.
A couple of things we want to remind you of as we are heading out of here. It is that time of season, and we've talked about it. Holiday Marketplace is going to be happening the 8th and 9th at the First Bank Coleman Center. It will be 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on November 8th, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. on November 9th. Proceeds benefit St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. You can tour the Reed Center Saturday, November 9th from 11 to 12, Reed Memorial Presbyterian Church and Community Center, 1004 North A Street. Should be a really good time. Go by. If you have not seen it, if you have not been there, check out the Tiffany windows. Whitewater Community Television has rescheduled its annual membership meeting. That is coming up on November 12th at 11 a.m. in the First Bank Richmond Community Room in Whitewater Hall on the Indiana University East Campus. We appreciate Richmond Power and Light for helping sponsor that. 16th annual diabetes event is taking place on Wednesday, November 13th from 5 to 7 at Reed's Lingo Grand Hall and Auditorium, 1100 Reed Parkway. They do require an RSVP, 765-983-7961. Our partners, the Wayne County Area Chamber of Commerce, are having a Meet Your Elected Officials on November 14th from 5:30 until 7 p.m. That's going to be at Forest Hills Country Club, and that's sponsored by Comcast. And then the next Lively Art Series concert is going to be taking place on Monday, November 18th. Caleb Ria, Music for Brass Quintet, is going to be happening in Vivian Auditorium in Whitewater Hall. Once again, that is at 7 p.m. It will be streamed live, but the artists always appreciate when you're able to show up and they can hear your applause. Thank you very much for watching this week's In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. I appreciate Elisa Worland and Barry Cramer, as well as Jon Duke, for being here. Thank you for watching this week's In Focus. Replays are available online on our Facebook page as well as on YouTube. As always, I wish you well. This episode of In Focus has been made possible through the support of First Bank Richmond, with 8 locations in Wayne County to serve you. First Bank Richmond, bank where you belong. And by Reed Health, offering nationally recognized quality and technology with a personal touch. Reed Health, let's shine together. And by The Leland Legacy, a rich past and a bright future. Live your best life at The Leland Legacy.